And we are beginning our class. So once again, welcome everyone. I'm so grateful to have you here. This is the Vedic Visionary Dive, in which we're going to dive into the basics of Ayurveda, the basics of the planets and the archetypes of the planets, how they're connected, and then different balancing techniques through herbalism and lifestyle and diet that we can practice to balance anything that feels out of balance in our bodies. And once again, this is just scratching the surface. You can only cover so much in an hour and a half, but we are going to do our best. So I'm going to share my screen. And y'all should be able to see this. Oops, that's not, let's see. All right, can everyone see that okay? Yeah, perfect. Okay, and so everyone is unmuted currently. If you have questions, definitely pop them into the what's the word I'm looking for? The little chat. Yeah, the little chat. Pop them in the chat. And then at the end, we can all, come together and talk about anything that we feel is still pressing or open. So, welcome to the Vedic Visionary Downloads. I named it as such because we are using the fundamentals of Ayurveda, the Vedic wisdom, and because you're all visionaries and because we're all about to get these downloads. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have you. I am your pilot on this trip. As I introduced myself earlier, my name is Sophia Avramirez. A little bit about me and how I got here. I have been on a healing mission and figuring out how to heal myself and I don't know, that's such a generic term. Like, I'm working to heal myself. Like, we're obviously all working to balance and heal ourselves. But I mean, I've had a lot of chronic things come up in my life, and finding these practices have truly helped me navigate and find my way through them. So I wrote a little blip there. I found healing through my own voyage into the deep terrain of the seen and the unseen within my body, mind, soul, and senses. So a lot of the internal and external work. And I'm so grateful to be able to share some of that with you today. I am a huge lover of Ayurvedic wisdom, and alongside that, I love traditional Chinese medicine, and I love allopathic medicine. I think it has a lot of amazing roots as well. Because allopathic medicine stems from these Eastern practices, and ultimately, like, you have to love the whole in order for it to work. So, though I've definitely been hesitant against allopathic and Western medicine, I'm learning to love it, and it's parts that really help. Obviously, I love herbalism. I love local herbalism, and a lot of the things that I craft in my apothecary are from local herbs. I'm based in South Coast, Massachusetts, and so I have a nice terrain of coastal and like woodland herbs that I work with. I am constantly seeking new ways to express myself. And for those of you who support me regularly on here, I really appreciate you. And I appreciate that you have watched me unfold. And I love watching all of you unfold too. While I love wellness and herbalism, I don't feel that any wellness or Eastern medicines or practices of health are at all helpful if you're not learning how to regularly self-express yourself and learning different ways to artistically share who you are. And so that is a huge part of what I believe in. And I just believe in supporting art and supporting everyone that is an artist. And that means supporting everyone because everyone is an artist. So that's a little blip there. And lastly, I'm a cosmic student, as you all are as well. So that's my little blip. Thank you so much for being here. And as far as my trainings go, I did a background in pre-med in my undergrad, and then I continued on, and I'm a NAMA certified Ayurvedic health counselor. I've worked for NAMA in the professional sphere. NAMA is the National Ayurvedic Medical Association. And of course, I have founded Ayurveda, which is my company, and which is the umbrella that we are all under right now. So thank you for being here with me. All right, onwards. So Ayurveda fundamentals. So this is where we're going to start diving into, oops, didn't mean to do that. I just want to make sure this is recording, everyone. Sorry. I think it is. I hope it is.
It says recording in my screen.
Thank you.
It's recording.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So Ayurveda fundamentals. So I know that some of you have an idea of what Ayurveda is and some of you have no idea what it is. So we're going to do a basic understanding of it. Essentially, Ayurveda is an ancient system of medicine. It's one of the oldest systems of medicine that is on this planet. And Ayurveda, the word itself, breaks into two words. It's a Sanskrit term, and it breaks into two Sanskrit words, Ayur or Ayus, which means life, and then Veda, which means study or wisdom or life or knowledge, right? So the two words are life and knowledge. And the word together, Ayurveda, means the knowledge of life, or the wisdom of life, or the study of life, or the truth of life. So Ayurveda is basically the study of life, which is so cool. And that's why I love the system so much, because it literally is the study of life. And we're all alive and we're all within life. So why not study it? And it's a really amazing system as well, because while Ayurveda stems like from 5,000 years ago in India, where these like sages and rishis sat on a mountain and, you know, in meditation and samadhi and bliss, and we're downloading, you know, all this information to write the Vedas, which is where yoga comes from, and where pranayama, which is breath work, and where Ayurveda comes from, right? These three practices, amongst others, like Tantra also comes from the Vedas. Ayurveda and all those practices, though they stem from India, they ultimately can be applied anywhere in the world to any type of person. I really like that it feels pretty like anti-dogmatic. Like I don't really like subscribing to any one thing. I think that every system works beautifully together. The reason why I do love Ayurveda and I've stuck with it for so long and like really feel like it's such a big part of my journey is because it allows space for everything. You know, it's ultimately like the mother platform. It's a mother foundation of medicine. And I really love it for that. You know, it doesn't say anything is right or wrong. In Ayurveda, anything can be a medicine, anything can be a poison. That's one of the like mantras, which I love as somebody who likes to take things that are potentially poisonous, right? If they're going to be done in an intentional way as a medicine, I love that Ayurveda supports that, you know? So anything can be a medicine, anything can be a poison, and Ayurveda is open and helps us connect with ourselves no matter who, what, when, where we are. And I really love that about it. So the word sometimes scares people because it's Sanskrit, it's a different language, but ultimately it just means that we're studying life, and that's it. So I put the focus here. Every person's life is different, and the perspective of Ayurveda allows a full scope study of how and what can be healed to help that person live their most optimal life through diet, lifestyle hacks, and understanding. We can achieve high levels of self-awareness and evolvement. So that's the idea, is to become more self-aware in ourselves and then within the environment around us by using the Ayurvedic hacks. It's a really beautiful, it's a beautiful thing to start to dive into, and I'm grateful you are all starting your journey. Oops. Okay. So the first part of the Ayurvedic component is that in life there are 10 pairs of opposites. So essentially what that means is that for everything in life, there is an opposite, right? Like if you have one energetic pull in one direction, there's another side of it. There's a spectrum, right? So these are the 10 like basic opposites that the philosophies that build Ayurveda say exist. So the first one is heavy, and then the opposite is light. And then I also included the Sanskrit because it's fun to say and see. So like guru and lagu. And the second pair is fast and slow, or slow and fast. I have them broken into building qualities. So the building is like the inhale, and then the lightening is like the exhale, right? So it's like we're building ourselves up and exhaling out. So we have heavy, light, slow and fast. We have hot and cold, oily and dry, smooth and rough, dense and liquid, soft and hard, stable and mobile, gross and subtle. And gross meaning like dense, like the earth. And then subtle, like being the air, and cloudy and clear. And so the idea is that these 10 pairs of opposites ultimately are the qualities that we can use to describe anything in life. Like you can describe your body with these qualities, right? Like, oh, today my body feels really like cold and rough and dry, like maybe my skin feels really cold and rough and dry, or my mind today feels really fast and it feels really light, like my thoughts are moving really quickly and I'm not really holding them. They're really light and they're really subtle and they're mobile. Or your thoughts can feel dense and they can feel like stuck, So the idea here is that you can apply these qualities to every physical thing around you. Like the desk in front of me is hard, like this tea that I'm drinking is obviously liquid, and they're very basic. It's very basic, intuitive descriptors, but they're important for our next portion. So we'll keep those in mind. So in Ayurveda, the idea is everything is made of those 5 qualities or of those 10 sets of opposites. And then from there, those opposites can form and create the elements. So now we're working with elements. So this is like Avatar, like we're working with the energies of the elements that we have around us, and they all hold those qualities within them. So the most subtle of all of the qualities, or of all of the elements, is ether, or space. So ether in Sanskrit is akash, which is a kind of a cool word, or akasha. And if we think about space, we think about like the space that we're in right now. The space around us, the space within our bodies, between cells. The subtleness of space, like you can't really hold it, but you can feel it, right? Like we're in space. So ether is our first element, and it's found the idea is these 5 elements are found within everything on this planet. The second element is wind. So the element of wind, wind is sorry guys. Wind is characterized by the qualities of being mobile, light. So it's mobile, right? Wind has movement to it. So it can be a breeze or it could be a tornado. Like wind is the only element that has movement to it. Wind is what governs me speaking right now. It governs any sort of breath that we're all experiencing while we listen. Wind is the movement of life. So the qualities that make up wind, it's mobile, it's dry, right? Wind can be drying. It's light. It's obviously not heavy. It's cold. It's considered cold because it doesn't have its own internal heat. It can be rough, right? It's subtle. And it's also erratic. I didn't put erratic down, but erratic is a big part of the wind element. You can't really predict the way that the wind is going to blow, right? It just does its own thing and you have to flow with it. Our next element is the element of fire. Fire is Agni. It's like the ultimate transformer. So fire is obviously hot. It can burn. It's the only element that has heat to it. And the qualities that fire holds are it's sharp, right? Like fire can be super sharp. It's also light. It's also subtle. And most importantly, it has that heat. And while fire doesn't necessarily move by itself, it does spread, and it spreads with that wind and that earth feeding it. So it has a spreading quality to it as well. Next, we have the element of water. And water is cool, it's liquid, it's soothing, it's soft. Think of like the ocean or a lake. Think about our tears, right? Like when we cry, like those like soft, nourishing tears. Sometimes they can be hot too, like, you know, hot, angry tears. But we have these qualities of water within us. And it's found in our lymph, and it's found in the things that support our organs, like the fluids, the cerebrospinal fluid, the synovial fluid. That is like all this element of water within our bodies. And we actually have, I think it's really cool that like going into the macro and microcosm, because the idea with Ayurveda is like that we are a microcosm of the macro, you know, like we are just we are simply a smaller unit of the bigger thing that's around us, right? Like we are a map. Our beautiful and unique bodies are a map and a vessel that simply are reflecting and mirroring back what is around us. And that's the cool thing about these elements, and really just thinking of it that way. So I really like the water portion of that, because we actually have like essentially the same percentage of water in our bodies as the earth does on its body, which is kind of cool. We're mostly water, you know? And then the last element is the most dense and the most gross of them, and it is the element of earth. So we moved from this super etheric and ethereal ether and space all the way down to our rooted earth. And we are composed of all of these elements. And the idea with Ayurveda is that while we're composed of all these elements, some of us might have more of one element than the other. And that's where it gets kind of fun, right? And this is where the archetype aspect of these things comes in that I really love. I think it's so much fun to look at someone and be like, wow, you're a really windy person, or like, you're a really fiery person, and start looking at people in that way, and really have a deeper understanding of what that means, and how we can then balance it out and make it so they feel completely whole as they are, and fully accepting of themselves as they are. And that is definitely part of the study of life that's really beautiful. So now we're going to get into this word, the doshas. And once again, this is like a super fast run through that I'm doing, because I want to get into planetary archetypes as well. If you guys want to go deeper into Ayurveda, there's so many offerings about that. This is just skimming the surface, but it's important to know these things in order to understand what we're getting into right now, which is the doshas. So the word dosha is a word that in Sanskrit, it doesn't really have a direct translation. But if it was to be translated, it would basically mean that which spoils, or that which goes bad, which is kind of funny. So the idea is that we have these three doshas, and there's these three like bioenergies that are meant to just go bad and like not be right. And it's kind of like a game that we play with the doshas. And it's like these three doshas are in our bodies, and they're, once again, they're basically just principles. Like I couldn't like, you know, it's not, I'm not saying like we're gonna like cut into you and find your pitta dosha or your vata or whatever. But basically it's more theoretical energetics. And the idea is that they go out of balance, and our role as a aware being, or as an aware, as a consciousness, is to then bring them back into balance. And that's what life is. So according to Ayurveda. So a dosha is an energy circulating within our physiological and psychological bodies. Every dosha has its own unique qualities, and that's where those qualities that we went through, those 10 sets of opposites, are going to come in. And each one governs different parts of our anatomy and our personality. Sometimes the doshas go out of whack, and with awareness and proper care, we bring them back to balance and restore harmony within our bodies and minds. And not only restore harmony, I want to comment on this. It's not only that we're restoring harmony, like when you start studying these things in this way, it doesn't simply restore where you were. It honestly makes you feel better than you ever have. One thing that I love about Ayurveda still is that every time I start to feel like off balance or just not myself, I always return back to these principles of the doshas and the elements and balancing them. And I always feel like it connects me a little bit deeper with myself than I was previously connected before I went out of balance. So for a lot of us that are in this realm together and doing this work that we've all been doing to get to know who we are better and to figure out our purpose and to to show up in the world at our best, it's a really great way to just accept where you're at and move forward and like take it and balance it out. So the doshas are meant to go out of whack, and we're meant to fix them. So we're restoring harmony, sometimes more harmony than we ever had. Each person's doshic profile is unique to who they are, and that's called their constitution. So my constitution is different than your constitution. And it's influenced by the environment that they're in, the foods they eat, the things they do, the relationships they keep, the sleep that they get. Like everything in life influences this dosha and these principles. Because once again, we're not it's Ayurveda isn't the study of food or the study of meditation, it's the study of life, right? And anything can be a medicine, anything can be a poison. So these are our doshas. And I'm sure some of you have heard the word dosha before. It's kind of becoming like, it's been a more trendy hit word in the wellness world. And for those of you who study yoga and meditation, or don't, you might have just heard these words anyway. So here we are, we're at our doshas. I'm going to take a little breath. I invite you all to take a deep breath. Let it out. These can get really exciting. I get super excited in these classes. And I really love sharing them, but it's always important. It's always important to come back in and remember that you have a body that you're in, and like constantly return back to it while this information is flowing through your body. So we've talked about the 5 elements, and now we're going to talk about the 3 doshas. So our first dosha is considered the king dosha. So the king dosha is Vata dosha. And Vata is considered the king because it is the most, it's the most ethereal, going back to the ether. And it's the most hard to pin down, and it has the most influence on the other doshas than they have on it. So Vata is made up of the elements air and space. So basically, we're going back to that elemental chart that we were looking at. And if we remember air and space, the qualities, think about air and space coming together. It's basically wind and ether. So you don't really have anything tangible. It's something that's basically floating and moving, right? If you think about these two elements coming together. So when you have air and space together, it creates this environment that is super quick and light and mobile, but it can be super erratic and it can dry you out. Like, think about your body in only air, in only space with wind, right? Like, just wind coming at you. It would be wild, right? It's so that's the Vata energy. It can be really rough and drying. But it's also, as I mentioned, hyper creative, and it allows room for a lot of thoughts and ideas to come in. So these 3 doshas are body profiles, and they are also physiological profiles, and they present differently in the body. So somebody who has a lot of Vata in them is often somebody who is a super fast, like, walker and talker and mover, and they have a lot of ideas, but they have a hard time standing still, and they have a hard time, if their Vata is out of balance, they have a hard time, like, really grounding in and rooting, because they're made of a lot of this air and space quality. Oftentimes those people can like be prone to, like, you know, rough and dry skin. They can be prone to insomnia. They can be prone to constipation, and ADHD and anxiety, right? It's a lot of these things that are super like fast moving. Like, ADHD is when you can't keep your thoughts in one place, and you have a lot of stimuli going on. And so it's a lot of this air and wind element, if you think about it that way. It's very simple, and it's kind of sweet to think of these things this way. But when a Vata person is in balance, they are once again wonderfully creative and spontaneous, and have like a lot of playful energy, and they want to just do all the things and travel and enjoy themselves, and you know, try new things. They are super into trying new things. I personally feel like I have a ton of Vata energy in me, but I also feel like I have the others. So it's fun as you hear this to kind of gauge, like, okay, maybe I feel more of this, and maybe I feel more of that, or maybe I don't feel this at all. So the doshas not only govern, like, physiological and physical parts of our bodies, but they also can be applied to the seasons. They can be applied to times of day. They can be applied to times of our life. I wanted to focus specifically on the seasons today. So I put their associated seasons. And if you think about, you know, Vata being this rough, cold, and dry time of year, it would make sense that the season that it is associated with is late fall and winter. So we're currently in the Vata season. And when you find yourself in the season of the dosha, you are more prone to that energy. So whether or not you feel like you have a lot of this Vata energy in you, if you're in the environment of it, it's going to affect you in some way or another, because once again, the microcosm and macrocosm in our bodies are connected to the universal body that is all of us, and the nature that we're around and the atmosphere that we're in. So we're currently in the Vata season here in the Northeast. And I mean, I like living in the Northeast specifically because we have the seasons pretty abundantly. But I know that those are felt everywhere. So wherever you are, you're in Vata season. So once again, these elements come together. The qualities that represent those elements also come together, and it forms this dosha. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope. Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's super simple. It's amazing and intuitive, and it's fun. All right. So our next dosha is Pitta dosha. So Pitta is our fire keeper. Pitta is when the elements of fire and water come together and all of their associated qualities merge, and it creates this like viscous, fiery, hot, spreading, passionate, like just embodied and fiery thing that transforms, you know? So while Vata is the mover, Pitta is the transformer. Going back to our season, the season of Pitta is summer, of course, when it's the most hot and fiery pretty much everywhere on the planet, their season of summer. And in that sense, like all the transformation of the earth happens, you know, there's so much abundance with the fire and the sun. There's so much growth that happens in that space. And Pitta people who are like super dominant in Pitta are definitely the people who advocate for transformation and for change and for evolution. While Vata is the type of person that has the ideas, Pitta is the type of person that is like, all right, let's get these ideas done. Like they're the fire starters. If a Pitta person is out of balance, what that looks like is somebody who is too fiery. And what too fiery means is they can be really aggressive. They can become super critical. They can become like, you know, violent, really judgmental, and those things can be applied internally. You know, it could be inner criticisms that are super deep, and it can also be applied outwardly. So when they're in balance, they're the life of the party. They have so much humor, and they're sharp, and they're with it, and their wit is on. But when there's too much fire, then we enter territory of anger in the psyche, and then in the body we might see inflammation. So like any sort of itis, like any sort of inflammatory disease is often a Pitta association. And the organs that Pitta is associated with are the organs of fire. So we're looking at the blood, we're looking at the small intestine where things start to get broken, like taken in and transformed. The organs of vision, the organs of vision are considered Pitta because we're taking in sight and we're flipping it and transforming it, and then our intellect is fire, right? So we can have our digestive fire as a fire, but then another form of fire that we have is the intellect and the ability to take information and process it. And that is also the element of fire. So when we say we need to work on our fire, we don't just mean that digestive fire, we mean the ability to also digest information. And I didn't cover the Vata organs, but I'll go back and do that real fast. Going into the Vata space of, you know, this airiness and this windiness, we're looking at things like the respiratory tract, of course, right? Because that's breath and that's air and wind. The bones, because they're porous and light. The ears, because they take in vibration and sound. And the colon, because it's super spacious and it eliminates, right? It's that movement. So that's how we get rid of the shit that we literally don't need in our bodies. So I just wanted to cover that and the importance of that. And lastly, our final dosha is Kapha dosha or Kapha dosha. You can say it either way. There's two different pronunciations. I really like saying kapha without the ph. It's just more fun for me. But you can say kapha too. So kapha dosha is the elements of earth and water merging together. And once again, when those elements merge, all of the qualities that earth and water holds merge as well. So if we think about earth and water merging together, we get this sticky mud, right? Like earth and water moving together, I think mud. And that is kind of like what kapha is. Kapha rules the chest, the throat, the stomach, the head, the lymphatic system, and our adipose tissue, all of our fat. So kapha is the body's mud. Think mucus, right? Like mucus production is a kapha physiological action. The qualities of kapha are it's slow, it's smooth, it's heavy, soft, and static. It stays still. So kapha is essentially the opposite of vata. While vata is basically this spacious, light, mobile, like you're floating in the middle of space, kapha is rooted, your feet are in the mud, and it's like the heaviness of your body. It is the earth of your body. A kapha type person tends to be like heavier set, bigger bones, while a pitta type person is more muscular and a vata type person is thin. A kapha person is like carries that adipose, may have a little extra fat on them. Kappas have huge hearts. Like a kapha person is super slow. They're like, I just think of like a giant teddy bear, like somebody whose kapha is in balance, who has a dominant of kapha is a super loving person. And of course, vata and pitta people can be super loving too, but kapha has that like earthly, just like motherly, I want to hold you and like cradle you and cuddle you type energy. So kapha is a lover. But when kapha is out of balance because there's too much earth, too much stagnation, they can become really depressed. They can become lethargic. They can become super apathetic, greedy, and just generally like, when any of these are out of balance, it's just kind of generally unpleasant, right? When a vata person is out of balance, they get super anxious and flighty. When a pitta person is out of balance, they get super angry and dismissive. And when a kapha is out of balance, they get super stagnated, depressed, and like gluttonous. So that's the idea is there. It's because we can look at it as it simply being because the elements in their body have accumulated too much of a certain element and they have to now balance that back out. So that's our quick run through of the doshas. I'm gonna see, curious about how sleep and our muscles relate to the doshas, Jenny. I think I kind of answered that a little bit with like the vata aspect. Like if you have too much vata, you might not be able to sleep. You might be prone to insomnia. If you have too much pitta, is it too much fire in your body? You might also not be able to sleep because you're like so on a project that you're just like, you won't turn off until the project gets done because you're like fire, or like you're trying to prove a point or you're in an argument and you're like, I'm not going to go to sleep until I'm right. Like that could be pitta insomnia. Like they all could be have some sort of insomnia. And then kapha is kind of the opposite. A too dominant kapha person with sleep issues is going to want to sleep all day. Like they're going to be in bed all day on the couch, not wanting to move or do anything. So, so that's that. And the muscle aspect, we'll have to dive into that a little more because I don't know exactly what you're asking there, but we'll keep moving. All right, so now we're going to move into the planets. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, but not really because everything is so connected. So we're going to work with the 7 like inner planets, if you will. These are like the main planets that I've been studying in astrology. And I know a lot of you are familiar with your astrological charts, and even if you're not, this is fun to kind of look at and see, all right, like where is it that this resonates with, like with me, you know, how does this resonate with me? And I'm excited. Sorry, I'm having some difficulties here. All right, so our 7 planets, they represent different archetypes. So whether or not you're into astrology, you can think of these as your ginormous friends in the sky, which I guess would still make you into astrology, but you can't deny that the planets are there, and they're up in the sky, and you can see some of them on a clear night. And so it's like, all right, what do these giants in the sky have to share or teach me about myself? So the first planet we're going to talk about is the sun, and that's our giant provider of energy. We're going to focus on the sun and its qualities and the day that it presents parts of the body, and then the archetype that it holds. So that's what I'm going to do with all of them. So the sun is fire, right? The sun is heat. It brings life. So if we're thinking about our 3 doshas, the dosha closest to the sun energy is pitta, pitta dosha. And as we talked about, you know, this type of person has a lot of oomph and they have a lot of passion, and the sun represents that. In our birth charts, in astrology, the sun represents the ego, right? So it represents our the light that we shine into the world on a daily basis. The quality of the sun is this heating and drying, and associated with that in our bodies. And once again, this is my first time teaching like these things, so I'm kind of like floating all over. So I really appreciate you guys staying with me, because I'm like, what did I put here for information? But going back to the sun, the rulership of the sun in our body and how it can associate is as the heart and the cardiovascular system. So that makes sense if we're like associating it with pitta once again, because pitta is this dosha of fire, and it rules the blood and it rules the passion in our bodies. So if we're looking at the sun being the ego and the great like father in the sky, right? This like more masculine energy, that is kind of like what makes your heart beat and what is it that you want to put out there into the world. And that's how I think of the sun. I think of it as this like thing that illuminates everything, and it's asking you what is illuminated in you and what is it that you want to share. And pitta dosha does the same thing. Pitta inspires us to create action, right? And to act on our passions and to act on our dharma, our life mission. And that is in astrology what the sun represents. So moving into the moon. So the moon is essentially the opposite of the sun. The moon is the inner world. It is the mother. It's the maternal fluid, like womb. The moon represents our emotions. So while the sun represents this like kind of a ego, which is a healthy thing, the moon represents the internal realm and our ability to communicate with ourselves, and it represents the light that we have to create within ourselves when all is dark, right? The moon comes out when the night is, when it's nighttime and when it's dark outside. And it illuminates. It's a silvery light that the moon brings in. So while the sun is this golden warm light, the moon is this cool moistening light, and it's liquid and watery. And so in that sense, the moon is associated with kapha dosha. And Kapha, once again, is this earth and water element. It's very slow and grounded. And the moon represents that more slow and intuitive healing that we do within ourselves when we sit down to meditate, when we sit down to really see what the internal communication is going on within us. And the sun and the moon work really well together. So our third planet that we're going to cover is the planet of Mercury. And Mercury is the communicator. It's the messenger. Mercury is associated with Vata. It's depicted as like it's like really depicted as an androgynous planet. So going back to our pronouns, Mercury would be a they, and Mercury doesn't really care. It doesn't care. Mercury just wants the information, and it's cold and drying, and it has that Vata energy, right? It's like this, I want all the ideas, I want all the info, I want all the thoughts, and I'm going to communicate them. And Mercury in like a lot of mythology is depicted as not only the messenger of like, you know, thought and ideas, but also the messenger between the heavens and the underworld. So Mercury was like always depicted as, you know, the god that could easily move from one world to the other. And he had that ability. So that's like your Hermes in Greek mythology. While the moon is someone like Artemis, like the hunter. She's like, you know, pulling her bow and arrow, and she's hunting. She's the archer, and she's, you know, pointing towards like the internal. She's hunting for that thing that you really want to work on within yourself. And it's like that nature and the cycles of the moon. Our next planet is Venus. So Venus is the lover. Venus has like a kind of a duo doshic imprint. Some sources I've looked at say that it's Kapha. Some that I've looked at say that it's Vata. I should have put both Vata and Kapha because I believe that it's both. But it's the reason why Kapha sticks is because the idea is that Venusian energy is more like warm and like moistening, and in that sense, we can think of it as love, right? Like love is very warming, and Kapha has that cooling but earthy quality, which can hold warmth to it. Venus is beauty. It represents affection. It represents attraction. And it's the planet of love. So we're looking at our Aphrodite and our Freya and our these fierce and beautiful goddesses that represent beauty and fertility and life in that sense. And Venus is super powerful. So knowing where, you know, in your chart where these planets lie is super helpful for understanding like how the doshas can imprint and in tune like why you might be the way that you are in the world. Once again, these are archetypes. They're stories. They're real. They're up there in the sky, but they're also like mythological. And in the sense, we can also be these mythological beings and look at ourselves as the same as all of these celestial giants because we are them. You know, we are the same as them. The opposite of Venus is the planet Mars. So Mars is associated with Pitta because Mars is hot. It's hot and dry. It's a hot and dry planet. It rules the blood and the adrenals, and it's considered the warrior or the fighter. Mars is like, you know, I think of the astrological signs it rules, which is Aries, and it's like this desire to be the first. It's this desire to like really fight for what you believe in. And that's the Mars archetype, is this, what is the battle that you're fighting, and how can you come out on top? And that's kind of the energy of the Mars planet, hot and dry, and ready to fight. So it's pretty intense. And once again, it's opposite Venus, which is the planet of love. We have our planet of Jupiter, which is ruled by the Kapha dosha. And that makes a lot of sense for me because Jupiter is the guru. It's this big planet, and it is super like a benefactor. The way that Jupiter as a god and a mythological archetype is depicted is as a like a guru, a very jovial energy, very like loving and open, and representing like the better things in life, and prosperity and abundance, and good luck and good looks. You know, like it's the planet that represents the higher education, the higher messaging. And in a different way than Mercury. While Mercury is like this get like kind of all over the place info, like Jupiter is like this beaming light. And lastly, we have Saturn, and Saturn is the ultimate teacher. It's kind of considered like a malefic planet. It's not necessarily bad. It's not bad. Nothing is bad, good nor bad, but Saturn is heavy. It gives heavy lessons, and it's considered Vata because there's reasons why we could look at it, but I'm thinking of Saturn return. And in the Saturn return concept, which is that Saturn is a very slow moving planet. It takes about 29 years for Saturn to make a rotation. So your Saturn return comes every like 28 to like 30 years, somewhere in between there, you start to experience the effects of it. And it can create a lot of Vata energy in your body because it can really throw a lot of chaos into your life. And the idea with that is that Saturn is like the father of karma. It's the teacher of lessons. It's the ruler of time. And Saturn is this darker planet that really keeps us like rooted in the reality of our lives, and gives us some hard to swallow lessons at times, but ones that are going to really put us on the proper trajectory in our life. So for those of us who are not quite at that age, I know I'm nearing my Saturn return right now, and I'm really energized to see what happens. And for those of us who have already gone through it or experienced it, I invite you to look back at that time period in your life, like what was happening around 28 to 30. And what was it that you were learning? So those are our 7 planets we're working with. Some associations with the doshas, and recognizing like that the doshic archetypes of the elements can then play into these planetary archetypes. I also want to just say that each day of the week is governed by a planet. And has that energy within it. So there's different ways that you can actually befriend the planets. So whether or not you want to like dive into your astrology chart, it's still fun to think about becoming more in sync with the harmonies of nature, and the way that the days of the week were named was for a reason. Like the ancient cultures before us that named the days of the week felt the influence of the planets on the earth. And could sense like, okay, like this is what's going on this day, and not just days really, it's more so like in cycles, so it's more so like we have days to teach us cycles, but it's all the now, it's all right now, and it's just ever shifting into a new now. So the sun governs Sunday, going back to it being a great day to work with your ego and present information and be outgoing and share, which, you know, I think it's a time to look at everything that has occurred previous to that day and everything that is to occur moving forward, and set some intentions, with that ego in mind of what it is that you're here to do. Moon day or Monday, you know, and once again, that's that restorative motherly energy. You know, I like to sink in on Mondays, sink like being SYNC, sinking in, and take some time to restore and refresh myself, and maybe be close to the water if possible. Wednesday is Mercury. It's midweek. I chose to have this class today because it's Mercury Day. And I'm also wearing green because it is a color to honor Mercury. So those are fun things that you can do to start befriending the planets. Venus Day, or I'm sorry, I just hopped. Tuesday is Mars Day. So that's that day of the warrior and that fire, and it's a good day to get errands done, and it's also a good day if you have to like get surgery. Fun fact, schedule your surgeries on a Tuesday. Wednesday's Mercury. Thursday is Jupiter. That the guru day, that day to chime in. I feel like Thursdays always feel really great. It's a good day to like acknowledge the higher lessons in your life, and acknowledge those around you that have wisdom to share. Friday is Venus Day, the day of the love and the lover, and you know, a beautiful day to connect with the ones you love once again, and you know, intimacy and beauty and affection, things to honor Venus. And Saturday is actually a really great way to just a great day to maybe finish some time sensitive things like errands, to honor like that chronic time karmic lesson planet, but also a really great day to just settle in with nature and connect, and ground in and take time and honor the good and the bad of the days that you are living currently, you know, the lessons that you're learning. I really like to like register those lessons on Saturday, and then on Sunday be like, all right, now I'm ready to do something with those lessons. So it all flows into itself, you know. They all flow into themselves, and the doshas all flow into themselves too. It's these three archetypes that flow beautifully together. And once again, we have the influence of all these planets on us, and we have the influence of the doshas within us. And those are just two things, by the way, that I'm comparing here. There's so many more archetypes and more things that we could dive into, that I'm simply comparing two systems in this conversation. There are so many more archetypes that tie in to the patterns of these systems. Okay, so I wanted to take a break. I wanted everyone to be able to take a break here, because I knew that it was going to feel like a lot. So just take a breather, take a big stretch, take a big inhale, exhale it out. Take your time, stretch it, feel it, move it, crush it, rock it. I hope you're all feeling good and staying with me here. I appreciate you so much for being here, and hearing this. And I wanted to play music, but I'm not going to, because I want to just honor this, but I will light some sage. And I realized that I didn't do this to begin, but I'm going to do it right now. I really like to open things with a little intention and a little prayer, and I got really excited to begin this. So in this little break time, I'd like to simply acknowledge everyone that's here and the energies that have protected them and brought us all together. I'd like to acknowledge our guides and our ancestors that lived the lives that they lived to have us exist on the planet at this time. I'd love to call in the love and the bliss and the harmony and the peace that all of us are deeply waiting and hoping for in our society, and really working for. And I'd really like to acknowledge that the fact that we're all here is because we want to understand ourselves a little bit deeper, and we'd like to be able to understand the world around us a little bit more. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I love to share these things. So I'd like to call in all those guides, thank them for being here, for bringing us all together, and for the space that we'll also be able to create for other people as we move on after this class with whatever bits of information we pull and take to better appreciate the world that we live in. So thank you all. And thank you guys. All right, let's move on. So the third component of this class is the herbal aspect. So there is a deep connection between plants and planets. This is something that we have known for thousands and thousands of years. And we can experience that when we look at a plant. We can experience the differences in each plant. Some plants are spiky, some are soft and beautiful, like this rose, but those have thorns too, you know? And, you know, some plants are super leafy, some are evergreens, some only last for a day or two. But regardless, you know, all these plants have different qualities, just like the doshas, just like the elements, and just like the planets, and just like us, right? So when we're looking at different plants, we can look at them as being plants that are helpful for vata, pitta, and kapha, our doshas, or we can look at them as plants that are ruled by the planets, or we can look at them as plants that you know, the biological aspect, of course, and the anatomical aspect of the plants. There's a lot of different ways that you can classify herbalism, and when you start to pull them together, it gets really fun. So some questions that you can ask yourself, like, because this is one thing, I'm in an astro herbalism course right now with this teacher, Seja Papam, and I love his teachings so much. And something that's really resonated with me about his teachings and why I enjoy them is they remind you that there's no right or wrong. And that's kind of what I want to remind you of too. Like in everything that you're seeing, like you could look at, you know, a person, because that's kind of the gist of a lot of this, and feel one thing from them, and they might feel something different about themselves. But there's no right or wrong, really. Like you might get a read on something that they're not getting a read on. And that's kind of how it is with herbalism as well. Like you can be told that a plant is like, you know, a Saturnian plant, but you might be getting a read on it as a Venusian plant, and that's okay. But it's just looking at the whys. So there's different ways that you can kind of dissect the herbs and see like what it is that they, that the qualities that they hold. So these are some questions, long story short, that you can ask yourself when you're looking at a certain plant or herb. You can start by looking at where the plants grow. So what is the climate of the plant? that it's like, what's the climate of the environment that it's growing in? Is it growing in the desert where it's hot and dry? Is it growing on the coast where it's like more, you know, humid and wet and damp and cool? And what does that look like? And then what is that ecosystem associated with, right? So like a desert plant would be a more Mars-like and more Pitta-like plant, right? It's hot and dry. And a plant that grows like but oh gosh, there's so much here. So basically the idea is that look at the environment and start to gauge from that space. Because I could start looping about why that works and why it doesn't, but we're not going to get into that yet. What does the plant feel like? So what's the texture of it? Is it a succulent? Is it like a thin and like veinous plant? Is it spiky? What does it feel like? What are those qualities there? Is it sharp? Is it smooth? What does the flower look like? What are the petals? What are the colors? What's the shape of the plant? Is it symmetrical? Is it asymmetrical? Those are all qualities that help you gauge what planet it's from. For instance, like a super symmetrical plant might be a Venus plant because Venus is all about aesthetic and beauty, right? So symmetry we often find to be really beautiful. So those are considered more of these like love aphrodisiac plants, such as the rose here. What part of the plant are you using? That's often a good sign of like, you know, what function it has, like what planetary function, what doshic function. Are you using the seeds? Are you using the flowers, the aerial parts, the leaves, or are you using the roots, you know? And then what does that look like? There's 7 primary colors, which is kind of cool. So there are, you know, there's a wide range of different colors outside of that as well, but there's 7 primary colors and there's 7 planets. So that's kind of interesting to think about. As I mentioned earlier, each planet has an associated day of the week and it also has an associated color. So you can look at the color of the flowers and you can often pull from there and say like, oh, like this pink purple plant here is associated with Venus because Venus is like this purplish pink color that it's associated with. A bright yellow plant or orange plant might be associated with the sun, or a silvery plant might be associated with the moon. So that's kind of a cool thing to think about. The big leafy green leaves of like mullein, for instance, is associated with Mercury, which is green. So you can start to dive into those facets and aspects. And I can, in the notes that I do give you guys, I'll put the colors associated with each planet too, so you can then tie it back into the herbalism. What parts of the body does the plant impact? So when you start to learn the different parts of the body that the planets impact and the doshas impact, you can then you can learn about the herbalism of the plant. Like, okay, I'm looking at this plant called skullcap right now. Skullcap is said to, you know, work with the nervous system. So then I think back and I'm like, okay, I'm reading about skullcap and it says that it works with the nervous system. So what dosha is associated with the nervous system? Vata. And what planet is associated with the nervous system? Mercury. So like you can start doing that and you're like, okay, now I've deciphered that Mercury and Vata and skullcap are all connected. So that's a cool way to start pulling together information. And lastly, what's the taste of the plant? Some plants are more sweet, some are more sour, some are more bitter, and those have influence on the doshas and the planets as well. And I'm actually about to get into taste a little bit. Oh, actually not yet. So these are some rules here. These are our balancing acts. So in a lot of this, I'm talking about, you know, the when things go out of balance, what that means. So I haven't really told you guys why they go out of balance. So this is the reason why. Oftentimes when things go out of balance, it's because there's too much of one thing, or too little of another thing. It's that simple, right? So it's like I have too much of this air energy, I have too much wind, and not enough earth. So I'm very vata, or I'm feeling like heavy effects of Mercury in my body. Not Mercury like the, element, but the planet. So like increases like. So if you're feeling super spaced out or super stagnated and depressed and stubborn, or super fiery and agitated, it's oftentimes because you have too much of that element coming into your body. So if we are working with an imbalance, we want to look at what we're doing first. Like increases like can also be helpful if you want to call in certain energies. So in like planetary herbalism, if you're trying to befriend the planets, you want to call in those similar sort of herbs that have the qualities of the planets. But with the doshas, we want to kind of balance it back out with the opposites. So I know that's a little confusing. Ultimately, like increases like, and opposites decrease. So in order to get back into balance, because the doshas have gone out of balance, or because we have like too heavy of an influence of a certain planet on us, we want to bring in the opposite energy to balance it back out. So if I have too much spaciness in my body, I want to enter more earth energy. If I have too much earth energy, I want to enter more wind energy and fire. If I have too much fire, I want to bring in more liquid water and like cool air. So basically, if you're out of balance and you need to get back into balance, you want to bring in the opposites. Does that make sense for everyone? Cool. Okay. Super simple. But it's very intuitive, and it's like ultimately life, right? It's like going back to the spectrum of all of this is like, we have these 3 doshas, we have all these planets, and the planets themselves represent this spectrum of life, and they represent the spectrum of these archetypes, and they're all little pieces of the puzzle. And that's how the doshas are, and that's how in alchemy, like the different forms, the parts of alchemy work. Same with TCM. Like there's just all of these systems ultimately worked to create one holistic understanding of existence. And that is what we get with these 2 systems in particular. So like increases like, opposites decrease. Super simple. But then we have this system of like what I was kind of saying earlier, where my head starts to spin. And like I said, I'm just skimming the surface here with you guys, and I'm just starting to skim the surface with myself. So thank you again for learning with me. Because while these rules are like rules, or like the general understanding that like increases like and opposites decrease, sometimes that is not true. And that's like this idea of like sympathy and antipathy, where it's like ironic, right? It's like you basically, like sympathy is, having like pity, and then antipathy, or like basically being like not, it's like being apathetic, right? It's like this system of like these 2 things pulling but working together at the same time, and creating this like drama of life, which is kind of what life is. And so it keeps things curious, because while these rules can be like generally applied, no one size fits all, and there's no way to fully understand anything. So like, you can look at a plant or an herb and say like, oh, it seems that this herb is good for Mars because, or that it would be bad for Mars because it is hot and drying, but it actually has a cooling effect on like a Pitta Mars person. And it's like ironic and doesn't really make sense. So ultimately, the biggest take home message in all of this is that you have to experience these things, and you can learn the information behind them, but until you actually experience them, you won't really fully understand them. And that's kind of what fits with not only plants, but everything. It fits with humans. Like, I can't look at you and just say like, oh yeah, you're a Vata Kapha and you have like a afflicted Venus and you have a really strong moon and your Mars is also afflicted. Like, I can look at that and say that about you by looking at the qualities you present and the charts and all of that stuff, but that's only giving me like a sliver still of who you are as a conscious being. And that's what plants are too. Like, you can look at them and you can classify them by planet or dosha or anatomical bit and all of these, really cool things that are incredible to learn and why we're all here right now. But ultimately, it all comes down to the fact that you cannot just put something in a box and think that you've figured it out, because you never will. There's always going to be something that proves you wrong. And I think that's the beauty of like, and humility of all of these cosmic studies, is that the deeper you go, the more you're going to realize you have to find out. It's like, it's the fractal, So I just wanted to share that. But the golden rule still is that like increases like and opposites decrease, like 98% of the time. So just remember that if you get anything from this, just remember that you can always find balance by introducing an opposite into your system. All right, onwards. So these are the tastes. They are the tastes in Ayurveda. And the idea with these 6 tastes, is that we want all 6 tastes in order to be like, balanced humans, just like we want all 3 doshas in balance, just like we want all of our planets happy in our charts and our systems. The idea with the taste is that they're like an access point to finding balance. Our senses in general are windows to balance. What we take in is the medicine on a daily basis. So like, what are you listening to? What are you looking at? What are you like touching and feeling? Your senses are the gateways. And what you're eating is ultimately what then creates your body and creates your anatomy and feeds you and becomes what you are. So let's look at some tastes and what they represent. So our first taste is like the heaviest of the taste. It's sweet. We all love sweet. Like, a lot of us really love the sweet taste. In our society specifically, we love sweets. We love sugar. Though sugar is not necessarily real sweet. Like, the real sweet is like natural sugars. So think like sweet potatoes, or like, we're not thinking like artificial like sugar that we get on like Sour Patch Kids, like we're talking sweet like fruit and like root vegetables and like rose petals sweet, so sweet is, the tastes are also made up of the elements, right? So we're going back to this elemental composition. Sweet is made up of the elements water and earth. It's heavy, it's cooling, it's moistening, and it's good for the system. It's specifically good for a Vata system and a Pitta system. We have the taste of sour, so we're thinking like lemons, and that is said to be a combination of the elements earth and fire. So those qualities coming together, creating this like moistening, hot, and like a heavier taste in a sense. Like I think it lingers, so it has like that heavier quality to it. We have salt, which is water and fire coming together, which I think is so cool. Salt is, it just makes me think of the ocean. And that also has these heavy, like moistening and hot qualities to it. Bitter. So the bitter taste is like, you know, eating, what's something bitter? I'm like blanking right now. Like the first thing that pops to my mind is so weird. It's neem. I'm like, we don't want neem. It's very bitter though. But we know some like bitter foods, like cacao, like things that, I mean, that's astringent too. Gosh, my mind right now it's been a long day, guys. We know what bitter tastes like. And then we have astringency, and that's earth and air coming together. I like to think of tea tree for astringency. It like kind of suctions things in. And then lastly, we have pungent, which is essentially all the spices. So we're working with fire and air as the elements, and pungency is like this lightness. It's light, dry, and hot. And think, you know, ginger, turmeric, garlic, anything that adds a zap to your food. So we have these 6 tastes, and the idea is like a complete food and a complete herbal like remedy, and a lot of times includes all 6 of these tastes and all 6 of these flavor profiles. And when you need to balance out a dosha, or you need to balance out like a planetary affliction, you can use the taste to help you do that. So if you have a lot of vata energy in you, you really want to focus on the taste sweet, salty, and sour. And that's because if you look at those, the elements that it's made up of, those 3 have those heavier elements in them. We're looking at sweet holding earth and water, right? It's the heaviest of the flavor profiles. Sour also holds that earth element, and salty holds that water element. So there are these heavier elements grounding down the ethereal nature of vata. So if you have super severe anxiety or sleep or issues where you're like not staying asleep or feeling insomnia, you want to favor sweet foods, salty foods, and even those sour foods to kind of ground in, and also herbs that have that flavor profile in them. Once again, we're looking at roots, and if we look at the seasons that these doshas are present, vata once again rules the late fall and winter, and the like food that is coming out of the earth are root vegetables, which are often hold that sweet energy. They're super nutrient dense, and hold those sugars that have been like captivated as they grow all summer and fall long. So that is the breakdown with the vata. And I mean, vata is the best diet, I think, but it's the tastiest. Yeah, Jenny, that does make sense why you love baking sweets in the fall, winter. You got it. Like pumpkins, that they're great for vata. They ground everything down. And soups, like making root soups are so yummy. Khichdi, I mean, khichdi is good for all 3. It's a great recipe, but it's that sweet flavor profile. So if we're looking at pitta, we want to balance pitta out with our bitter foods, our astringent foods, and also our sweet foods. Going back to the sweetness, pitta is super salty, right? And they're literally salty. Look at what salt's made out of: water and fire. And that's what pitta is made out of. It's water and fire. So like pitta is literally salty, and they can be super, yeah, like just like raw is right. Like they can be super raw. So they need to cleanse out that anger. And a good way to cleanse out that anger is with those bitter foods that, like, oh my God, duh. Like all the leafy vegetables, like all the leafy vegetables are bitter. Like think like your kales and your shards and your dandelion greens. Like those are all so good for pitta. Turmeric is also considered like a more bitter root. And it cleanses the blood. Once again, think about like the Mars and the sun aspects, that heat. We want things that are going to cleanse out the blood and those associations. It's so fun to connect these things out loud because I do it in my head all the time. But like doing it out loud is really hard, guys. So thank you for staying with me. All right, so pitta, bitter, astringent, sweet. We want to purge out that anger. We want to cleanse. We want to make it better. We want to cool it down, honestly. We really want to cool pitta down. Kapha dosha is the most earthy and watery, right? So they can't eat sweet because kapha is so sweet on its own. Once again, look at what sweet is made out of. It's made out of water and earth, which is what kapha is made out of. So we gotta eliminate the sweet if we have a lot of kapha in us. And that's typically in the spring that we really want to focus on that elimination of those sweet and salty foods. And we want to instead start entering some fire with pungency. So kapha really benefits from having, like spicy foods in every sense of the word. Like some heat is really good for kapha, and not eating bland foods. Like they need their food to be spiced nicely. So I think like curries and, but like light curries, not super heavy on the sauce, but more so like flavor is good for kapha. And they also need that astringency and that bitterness that pitta also requires. So like those leafy greens, the lighter foods. And kapha is actually the only dosha that coffee is okayed for, like a cup of black coffee, because it is astringent and bitter, and it like livens up the body and stimulates it. So vata and pitta are like not necessarily the best candidates for drinking coffee, because coffee, it makes you super energetic, and it also can make you super like mad. But kapha can use it. So just fun fact, if you guys like to drink coffee, if you're super kapha, it's cool. If not, you might want to chill. I'm talking to myself in that too. So this goes into, we just went into some foods, but going back into the herbalism bit, all these tastes, these 6 tastes, also are resonant with all the herbs that exist and all the medicinal plants. So you can start to apply, these concepts to finding herbal remedies that work for you based off of where you're at, work for you or the people that you love and have around you. Lastly, I just threw in this term rasayana. I really like this term. A rasayana is basically like an herb that is a quality herb for all 3 doshas. So there's a few herbs that actually are so colorful and unique in their being and their essence that they can actually help in different ways each dosha. And it's so cool because it's like, once again, like these plants are our friends, and there's certain plants that are just like, I don't care who you are, I'm gonna find a way to help you. And I think that's so awesome. And I just love that term, and I think that we should all be rasayanas to each other, and be helpful for one another, no matter what our dosha profile, or no matter what planet rules us the most, or no matter what whatever we are. I think being a Rasayana is a good goal in life. So I wanted to throw that out there, and there's a few herbs that are really beautiful Rasayanas that are my faves. So we're gonna scoot on. And I'm gonna give you guys some, oh good, this is perfect. This is our last slide. This is a whirlwind. Okay, so, and we have 10 minutes until we're done. So doshas and planets, balancing them out. So we're gonna go into our herbs here. So once again, when we were looking at Vata, we found that the planets that hold the similar cooling, drying, and rough aspects of the Vata dosha, that wind and ether, are Mercury and Saturn. Mercury being our messenger, Saturn being our deliverer of chaos and karmic lessons. So we have these two, like, really thought-based planets, and we have this super idea and air-based dosha. So what does it need in order to feel balanced? It needs to be warmed, and it needs to be grounded, and it needs to be nourished and oiled most of the time as well, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So if we're looking at the herbs that help with these, like, certain this profile, we're going to look at herbs that are warming, grounding, heavy, nourishing. And I listed some of my personal favorites for that. The first one that I listed is ashwagandha. It's a root, so going back to the roots, and like the word itself holds the medicine, right? Like Vata is super up in the air. Mercury is like whizzing from world to world, like just all over the place. And Saturn is just like cold and dark and doesn't care. And they need to be grounded and rooted into the earth. So we're working with ashwagandha root and calamus root. And those are two amazing herbs for Vata. They help calm the nervous system. Calamus in Sanskrit is vacha, and it means to speak. It's a very helpful herb for communicating messages. Tulsi is one of the herbs that I was mentioning earlier, Rasayana, the herbs that are good for everything and everyone. I mean, maybe not everyone, but like most people. Tulsi is incredible, and it's an amazing herb for Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, but I listed it for Vata. And it's so tasty. And once again, holds those profiles of like that sweet and spicy that can be helpful for, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. It's sweet, it's spicy, it's perfect. Milky oats are a great aid for Vata. They're a great herb to settle Mercury and Saturn. Comfrey is a super Saturnian herb. The other thing with Saturn I didn't mention is, or I might have mentioned, but it's not only the ruler of like time and karmic lessons, it's also the ruler of chronic illness and disease. So if you have a chronic illness or disease that you're working with in your life, or a loved one does, the idea is that, you can look at where your Saturn is in your chart, and then also like befriending Saturn by, those exercises of going outside on Saturday and wearing black and using herbs like comfrey, which help with chronic pain, is really cool. Another herb like that is hemp. Hemp is one of the herbs that obviously helps with a lot of long-standing chronic issues that people have, sometimes almost too well. So it's a matter of like, utilizing it the way that it needs to be utilized, and but not getting stuck in it. However, I want to comment on the Saturn hemp cannabis connection. I love cannabis and hemp as a Saturnian like messenger to kind of shake up the vata and to like, you know, create new ideas, because I know that in certain situations that I've like really dove in with cannabis, it's shown me things that I was maybe not ready to see, but like had to see, right? So it's, once again, like Saturn is this teacher of karmic lessons, and cannabis as a plant is this teacher of karmic lessons. So it's kind of cool to start connecting the dots in that action space. And lastly, I put mullein, but that's not in the right place. I mean, it could be in the right place, but mullein is also a great kapha aid. Mullein is a good herb for respiration, and it opens up a lot of congestion in the lungs. So that's actually not in the right place. Ignore that. And in your notes that I'm going to give you, it will be in the right place. So those are some vata herbs. Think really grounding, nourishing, help heal chronic issues, really like root you down. And yeah, that's a good way to put it. Simple as that. And then when you're rooted in your vata, the ideas will flow more fluidly. You'll be able to use Mercury, your element, your communicator, and you'll in a more effective way, and you'll be able to clearly let the lessons of Saturn pass through you with that vata energy. So I kind of like to like think of it that way too. If everything's aligned in the doshas, then the planetary archetypes can come in and also do what they have to, through and in the body. Our next plant dosha combo is Pitta, and the Pitta being associated with the sun and Mars, the planets of heat and fire, the planet of the ego and the warrior. And what does it need when those things feel like they are totally out of balance? We're working with plants that are cooling and soothing to the system. Things that will pacify Pitta are like, you know, mostly the word here is cooling. We want to cool down and cleanse. Cleansing is another word, and also detoxing is another word. So we want to detox. It's blood and heart. So we want to make sure that that's clear and cleansed, and the blood flowing through us isn't holding toxins of anger or like actual toxins. So I listed some herbs first that are good for the digestion of the mind. Once again, I mentioned earlier that Pitta not only digests food and like it's not just the transformative power of eating something and digesting it through your body, that Agni digestifier, but also the digestive power of taking in information like you're all doing right now and using your critical nature to decipher it as whatever you're deciphering it as. And so that is your Pitta dosha working right there. It's your organs of vision and it's your organ of mind. So great herbs for Pitta to kind of cool it down if it's a little hypercritical, and also to like help it cleanse itself are skullcap and Brahmi. Skullcap is a nervine, so it helps really like work on your nervous system and regulate your nervous system, but it's a cooling nervine, so it works nicely for Pitta. It's literally called skullcap, which is awesome. So it's, you know, it's right in the name. It's an awesome herb for your brain. And Brahmi or gotu-kola is another really great herb. It's cooling and it's great for memory, and it's great for helping that organ of digestion in your brain digest information and then like filter it in the proper way. I put violets in here because violets are beautiful and they're purple and blue and they're cooling, and just to look at, right? Just to look at them, it's cooling. But then when you actually take them into Brahmi and gotu-kola isn't actually the same. They're a little bit different, but Kopa is the same as gotu-kola and Brahmi is different. So thank you for asking that. Violets are super detoxifying for the blood. So when you take them internally, they help cleanse the blood out. Dandelion is a liver detoxer and helps purge your kidneys and your gallbladder, and it helps you eliminate it once again helps cleanse out that blood and detox. And dandelion root is also super helpful for not just pitta but also vata, if vata is imbalancing in the body. Rosa rugosa, I had a picture of Rosa up earlier. I love Rosa. She's so sweet, and once again, sweet is one of those herbs that is helpful for pitta, but also has that like light bitterness to it. So Rosa is a beautiful aid, and one thing I like about Rosa, it's like a Venus herb. So if we think about earlier, I was talking about the planets and their opposites, and pitta is, can be associated with Mars, and the opposite of Mars is Venus. So we're looking at, when we're balancing it out, we're often looking at herbs that are like also kind of the opposite of those planets. So like lavender is also a Venusian herb. Something to think about there. I'm giving you guys a lot. Another cooling herb is catmint. I love catmint. I mean, any type of mint is great for pitta. It's cooling. Peppermint is a little more spicy. I mean, it has pepper in the name, but it still works. Lavender, as I mentioned. Yarrow is a warrior's plant. So yarrow is ruled by both Venus and Mars. It's a really interesting like profile on yarrow. It has like this really beautiful aspect to it, and it has these like feathery like leaves that are super tender, and it has like a nice like light buttery scent. But its action is pretty like ferocious. It can be a really amazing guide and aid to healing wounds. So it's a great herb for pitta, and it's also a great herb for kapha, because it like can also add heat in a way. So it's one of those herbs that I was saying earlier, that there are some herbs that you can like start to classify and then you get confused by them, because you're like, oh, you could be classified as this, but then you did this and now I'm confused. And it's just a great analogy for life and also people. So yarrow is one of the herbs that's more confusing, but I put it as a pitta herb because I think of it as an herb of protection. And sometimes with pitta, the reason why they're so critical and the reason why there is so much fire is because they're angry, because they feel robbed, or they feel like they weren't protected somewhere along the line. So they have this excess fire that they're trying to like make up for. They're trying to make up for that place where they didn't have their fire up, and now they're lashing it out in different ways. And so yarrow is on like a psychological and spiritual way. It's very protective, like energetically as well. So that's why I put it there. And lastly is ginkgo, another great herb for memory and the brain. And I mean, pitta loves their mind. Like all of them love their mind. Like vata really loves the mind, but pitta loves pitta loves the brain. Like pitta wants to do shit, and it's action oriented, and it's like, I want my mind body connection to be on lockdown so I can be super alpha and on top of things all the time. And so helping pitta out is by cooling it down, but also giving it that satisfaction of, healing the mind and the brain. And lastly, we're at kapha. And once again, kapha was associated with Venus and the moon, these lovey, like motherly, affectionate type planet archetypes. And that is what kapha is as well. Like I said, it's a kind of like a big teddy bear. It's earth and water coming together. It's the springtime where things start to grow. But in order to balance out too much of this kapha energy, too much of the Venus and too much, or afflicted Venus and afflicted moon energies, you can't have too much Venus or too much moon. It's more so like that they're just not friendly right now. You want to warm and energize. You want to heat things up. You want to stimulate. And so, and that, I mean, that could be looked at as an analogy for the love and the emotional world, right? Like if you're feeling disconnected from your emotional world in your lunar world, right? You want to heat it up. You want to add some energy to it. You want to stimulate it and see what's going on. And same with your love life and the affection and the beauty. Like you want to add some heat and energy to it. So I added a few herbs such as cacao, which is like an aphrodisiac, and also beautiful stimulant, stimulating herb and plant, and so medicinal. So cacao is a great aid for kapha. It holds some of the energy of kapha, but it also boosts it forward. St. John's wort is this beautiful yellow flower. It's incredible for aiding depression. And once again, when kapha goes out of balance, we find that they are prone to depression and stagnation. I put motherwort. Motherwort, its Latin name translates to lion-hearted. So once again, kapha rules the chest and the lungs, and so and thereby, like, you know, the heart is associated with that. So I put motherwort there. It could also help pittas out, but I feel like motherwort, it helps you be more lion-hearted, and sometimes that's what kapha needs. It needs that push to like be stronger and be activated. Cayenne and coffee. So those are a little more spicy, a little more bitter, a little more astringent, which are those flavors that we're looking for. And once again, with kapha, like pretty much all spices are good. So anything that you would spice your food with, whether you consider it an herb or not, it's often good for kapha. It could use it. And I feel like that speaks to that like Venusian love and also that lunar world as well. Like, you know, there's so much that can be captivated in those spaces. Hi. All right, guys. Whew, that was a lot. How are we all feeling? Whoever's still with us, are we all still here and with us? Good. I hope that that information just resonated with you, and I really appreciate you all being the first to have me connect those dots out loud. And you know, if you have any questions with Ayurveda in general, I like to go deeper into Ayurveda. There's a lot that I didn't cover that I typically do cover during an Ayurveda class, that made this a little confusing for me. So I hope it wasn't super confusing for you. But if you have any questions post this, like I said, I'm going to be sending out notes to all of you, and I'll be posting them up on Patreon as well. And that's going to be accessible. And if you want to dive in a little deeper, I'm so down to dive. I'm really excited to be able to share this and start connecting things for myself and for all of you. So I'm super grateful. I hope that this information washes over all of you like a beautiful waterfall and like the most wonderful starlight, and like the most delicious herbal infusion in your body. I just, you know, whatever you are meant to hold on to, you will. And whatever you weren't meant to hold on, you won't. And it's that simple. So, maybe moving forward, like looking at an exercise you can do is like looking at the food choices that you're making, like what food flavors are you favoring, which ones do you think are helping you, which ones aren't helping, and then start to make your herbal choices that way. And when it comes to the planets, like look at your chart, see what planets are mostly present. Like I know I have a lot of certain planets in my chart that more so than others, and that definitely resonates with the way that I present as a doshic profile and also as a human in general. So look at those archetypes, how they're coming up for you, start connecting those dots, and then start finding the herbs that work for you, and start finding the medicines that you think balance you out. And once again, that's often shifting and ever changing. So this is a process of awareness, and Ayurveda is the study of life. It's not just the study of like the fraction of life, it's the whole thing. So keep studying and keep like having that awareness of yourself and the awareness of everything around you. And you're a wizard. That's what leave it at. You're a wizard. I'm a wizard. We're all wizards, and we have a lot to be aware of and a lot to learn. And we're lucky that we get to. So, namaste. I love you all. Thank you again for being here, and I'm gonna stop recording now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sophia. That was amazing.
You're so welcome. There was a lot there.
Just lights.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun to learn about. I look forward to like absorbing all of this. I took some notes, so I'll be like revisiting them here and there. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you guys for listening and being a part of that with me. I really appreciate it. Love you guys.
Love you. Bye, babe.
You share the corresponding colors to each planets too?
You want me to tell you them right now?
Yeah, hit them with me.
Okay.
Hold on, I got my calendar.
My laptop's gonna die. Hold on one second. I have to plug it in. It's literally at 1%.
Later too.
Okay, so your colors. Oh, it's dark in here. Your colors are. I can write them down too, and send them in notes. But
Yeah.
Sunday is associated with the color like gold, basically. So I try to wear like gold or yellow on Sunday, like to honor the sun. Monday or Moon Day is associated with gray, white, and silver. Wednesday, the day of Mercury, is associated with green, which is kind of cool because if you think about like Mercury being like midweek, right? And like the messenger, green is right in the middle of the colors. So it's like Roy G. Biv. So it's like right in the middle and it's green. I skipped Tuesday. Tuesday is Mars Day. It's red. So the color of war and blood. Thursday is Jueves, Jupiter. It's yellow, the color of the guru. Friday is Venus Day, and it's purple and pink, love and affection and crown and connection as a rhyme. And Saturday is Saturn, and it's black.
Awesome.
So Andrew, in New Mexico, when I was wearing all black, I was like really honoring Saturn. I basically only wore black on that trip, which is funny. But I told you I do wear color. So yeah, but those are the color wheels. And yeah, I appreciate you all so much. Pete, I'm so happy you came on here. And I think you're still there, but I'm so grateful that you came on. And Jenny, love you.
I had to take myself off mute. Love you so
Appreciate you
much.
guys.
Love you.
I need to go ground down and soothe my vata now.
Been feeling it.
All of you. Have a beautiful evening.
Love you so much. I love you guys. Have a nice
Bye.
night. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Enjoy your Thursday.
Oh,
Make
thank
sure to
you.
wear yellow tomorrow.
Guru Day. And the connection of the doshas as well. It's a trip. It's all such a trip.
Oh, I don't know if you saw, but I did ask a question.